what you're about to see today, this was originally built in a financial services organization for Basel II. So basically, there was a bank that had a really bad pricing error in the mutual fund industry, and the Bank of Italy approached that bank and they said, you can never make this error again. What are you going to do? So basically, that's where the Presto risk management prototype was built. Three-tiered Basel II risk management solution, allowing team leaders, or should I say process owners, to link their processes, their controls to the Basel II risk portfolio, which is 7 total risks, but broken down in 3 tiers. At the end of the day, it's about 85 risks that any process owner should be in tune to and should be controlling to make sure that those risks don't occur. In other words, they should be mitigating them. So basically, Irwin, in an offsite that we had earlier in the year, he brought to our attention that this same logic works with 6M. This same logic works with manufacturing risks, which from my point of view, to be honest with you, we just got into pharma in the last 2 years, and we got multiple pharma clients fairly quickly. So I'm excited that I'm learning the industry, but I'm a financial guy at heart. So it's nice getting this input. Ian helped us articulate how the Basel II 3-tier risk portfolio is very easily translatable into the 6M risk portfolio. So basically, what are we talking about? We're talking about the 6M risks, which are manpower, machinery, material, method, mother nature, and measurement. Now, the reason you see all this text here is because you're going to see this in the system now, because your goal using this methodology is that any process owner understands this, and you want to give them the tool to be able to see this in the moment that they need this, so they can be the one to decide if these risks exist. Now, just as the Basel II 3-tier risk classification works, same thing we have here. So you can see from a 6M point of view, manpower risk number 1 in tier number 1 breaks into level 2, and then it breaks into level 3. And when you go through all of those, you can, as a process owner, as a company leader, you can feel comfortable to say, wow, if my process owner understands all of these risks, understands that he or she should be keeping their eye open for mitigation for these risks, then I feel comfortable that we have risk under control. And that's what we're going to show you today on how you can do that very quickly. So manpower, for example, that's the 3 tiers of it. That's what any process owner should know about manpower risks. They should know how to apply each of these last 2 columns to their process portfolio to say, does this risk exist or not? So you load that into the system, load machines into the system, materials, methods, mother nature, and measurement. So basically what you're doing is you're defining your taxonomy of 6M risks, and you're putting them into the system, and you're going to then marry these risks to your process portfolio. So today we're going to look at a team on the dashboard that's responsible for blister packaging. So those of you that don't know what blister packaging is, that picture should answer the question for you. Now, Irwin's an expert on this, so as I'm putting things in the system, he's probably going to be critiquing my work and, of course, spawning ideas for discussions in the Q&A. So keeping that in mind, there's our dashboard, and you can see there's our team and what you're looking at. By the way, if you're going to use this module, there's the dashboard you would click on. Letter A, you got your 6 tier 1 risks listed at the top. You got your processes, letter B, and then where you see letter C, that's where you're working. That's where your team is going to start saying, okay, let's do the risk analysis exercise. Let's decide which risks are present, which risks are mitigated, which risks don't exist at all. And that's what the automation is made for. So first exercise, before we even go into the 6M exercise, we're going to do a preliminary exercise, and we're going to map client demand risk. Now, this is a super easy to use feature in Presto that adds immense value, especially when you're getting new people into the system. So here we are. I'm going to go up a level. We're working on the product family blister packaging. We're going to have a look at Kirsten's 12 blister packaging processes that she's given for us, as you can see. So she's doing incoming materials, primary packaging, secondary packaging, aggregation, and palletization, product release. So there's her processes listed out for us. And there's her standard work checklist. So now what you can do is you're going to be looking at the controls in those standard work checklists, and you're going to be lining those up to the risk portfolio. But the first thing I like to do when I get to know a new client, a new team, anybody that has a process that I'm not really familiar with, I ask them to do this exercise. So we're going to say, Kirsten, give us your client demand risk landscape. So basically what we're going to do now, we're going to be working on the process heat maps workbench. So you can see here's her macro processes from the process for blister packaging. And then as you click on these, here's her micro processes. So what you can say is, okay, tell me about cold form blister cavities. And this is the client demand heat map. So she's going to say, on Monday, we don't have a lot of work. On Tuesday, it gets heavier. Wednesdays and Thursdays are our biggest days. Fridays, things turn down. And on Saturday, we have a small team doing a light shift. So that immediately you as a new business leader know from a staffing point of view, from how much coffee you have to drink to manage your business, you know immediately Wednesday, Thursday, be careful. From a seasonal point of view, she's going to say, the beginning of the year is usually slow. Things start picking up in April, and things start getting super heavy in May for one reason or another, obviously depending on the season, depending on the product, depending on the company. And she's going to say things start turning down at the end of the year. So what you're doing now is you're giving your team leaders, your process owners, the possibility to now tell the company what's going on. And she might even put a note here. In May, we have fiscal year ends to force us to rebalance inventory. So you know immediately, definitely don't want to be understaffed here. Now, again, this is a preliminary exercise, but it's risk related because we're talking about the people that are going to be handling your risks. So I didn't want to go too much into that. There's a lot of things we could talk about there, including having them give you analytics on each of your processes, required skills, but that's for another demo. Let's talk about 6M. So exercise 1. Complete the 3-tier 6M risk identification assessment. So the first thing you want to do, you want to teach every person in the company to take those 6 risk cards that I showed you with the 3 tiers and understand them inside and out and marry them to their processes. So for example, manpower, there's the description you saw in tier 1. Here's a level 2 risk, training gaps, inadequate or inconsistent education and skill building for employees leading to compliance and performance issues. So that's level 2. Level 3 is inadequate GMP knowledge, gaps in understanding of regulatory requirements. So this here, level 3 is what you're really zooming into. You're going to go to every process in your portfolio and say, is there inadequate GMP knowledge? And how do you do that? Going back to our dashboard, here's our new risk management 6M dashboard. So you can see, again, there's her macro processes. Here's her micro process, cold form blister cavities. So here's your 6Ms across the board. And immediately, you know, in manpower, we have 22 tier 3 risks that we need to understand what they are. So you click on that and you can see level 2, we got training gaps. So let's talk about training gaps. There's 5 types of training gaps: insufficient technical training, inadequate GMP knowledge, poor onboarding orientation, no refresher, continuing education, lack of cross-training. So let's take a look. What's lack of cross-training mean? You click on that and it gives you the breakdown of the 3 tiers. Now, to be honest with you, you should put as much information as possible in here. And what's coming next is probably, and I think it'd be a good idea, I'm going to ask this to some of our clients, but links to documents that support this. So you can go even further, even videos, who knows? But at this point in time, process owner is going to look at this. He's going to say, does this risk, fewer employees can fill in when someone is absent or overloaded? And now you're asking your process owner to say, is this risk present? In other words, is it active? Is this something we need to be worried about? Or is it not active? In other words, no issue, no problem. So I close that and you can see immediately green light, no problem. What about no refresher continuation education? Skills not updated regularly for new process equipment. Now that one you might say, yeah, you know what? I'm worried about that. What about poor onboarding orientation? Not worried. What about inadequate GMP knowledge? Gaps in understanding of regulatory requirements? That's probably a risk in every sector, every company on the planet. That's regulatory based, so I'm going to put that as a red. And then insufficient technical training, let's give that a red as well. So now what you've done, you can see for manpower, level 2 training gaps, I've identified 3 risks. If I close that, you can see it now. There's my 3 risks. What about machinery? Let's do machinery on this project over here. 6 types of risks. Maintenance and reliability. So preventative overdue PM leads to unexpected breakdowns, no problem. Spare parts unavailable, no problem. And I got that in there twice, so I'm going to leave that like that. So you can see now, actually, let's go take a look at calibration and validation. Calibration overdue or not documented. Let's give it a red. Let's imagine that this petty external theft or fraud included theft by physical means, such as removing physical property, PC theft. Let's say, yeah, that's a risk. So I'm going to put a red there. And I'll close it at that. So now you can see we start to build our risk portfolio. We start identifying where these risks exist in the process portfolio. Exercise number 2, assess the strength of the control. So basically now, Irwin has put these standard work checklists on our dashboards, and I'm going to come back here. And now you can see we're on the risk dashboard. And we start to fill up our portfolio of risks. So now let's go take a look at some of the standard work. And if I take a look at, actually, let me open up this report to see what we've just identified. So we've just identified cold form blister cavities, project. Here you have the risks. So you have inadequate, insufficient technical training, inadequate GMP knowledge. In manpower for machinery, we have calibration overdue or not documented. So let's take a look at the cold form blister cavities. That's the project. That's the process where we're starting to identify some risks. So that would be in. There it is. So here's our standard work checklist. Now the next thing you can do, he's put 2 steps in here. These are actually controls, cavity depth measurement. So what you can do, you can really zoom into your control and you can say, this is a detective control. It's also a completeness control. And here's where your process owner is going to say, is it strong? Is it fair? Or is it weak? Now he might say, this control is very good. There's a bunch of other information you might ask from your project, from your team leader, from your process owner. Won't go into it now, but we're happy to talk about it.
Can I jump in here for a second, Andrew?
Yeah.
As the manufacturing in pharmaceuticals is a regulated environment, you put all of this information in, but you're eventually going to need to document and prove that what you're saying is true. So can you show them where they would put in? So if you had a statistical process control chart, or if you had other kind of operational data that you wanted to link to that either showed that it was or was not a problem that is under control being dealt with, that's where the document linkage and the knowledge management comes into play. So the dashboard is the overview of what's going on, what are we working with, but the documented evidence comes in these links to the document control system that you use in your company to keep your SOPs, to keep your records and your other compliant documents. So that's kind of an important part of this whole scoring system, is the documented evidence that this exists. And so would you mind showing that? Sorry to jump in there.
Yeah,
that's what ties it all together for me.
Okay, so just on this second one here, let's just give this a bad one so you can see what happens when you say this control here is weak. It's a detective control and it's a timeliness control. So you're teaching your team leaders to understand the controls that are supporting the processes, and then marrying the processes to the risk. Now, speaking about knowledge management, don't have it here maybe for the next demo here, when let's put some in here, but here's where you link your documents. So if I wanted to know how to do cold form blister cavities, here's where you link your documents to your shared drive and say, here we have an internal document, it's a procedure, it's an internal SOP, it's in Microsoft Word. Here you would put the title, you put what state it's in. So is it updated? Is it needs to be renewed? Is it a draft? Is it missing? And here you put the link. So then as you save these, I'm just going to put SOP for whitewashing. You save that. So now what you're doing is you're collecting all your documents here, and then anybody could just come here, click on this, and they're going to go straight to your shared drive if there was a link in there. So you're starting to teach your team to understand what the risks are, teach your team to understand where the controls are to support those risks, to mitigate those risks. And next step is to decide if there are any other holes. So complete your risk and control self-assessment, RCSA. And again, this all comes from the Basel II financial operational risk management logic. So at this point in time, we're going to go back to our process workbench. And now you can see here, I put one strong control on cold form blister cavities. I put one weak control on cold form blister cavity. So immediately, you as a team leader, you as a manager, you as a quality controller know, okay, there's something here that could make things go bad. So let's go back to this now. You can see we're starting to identify, we got 3 risks here, we got a weak control. Next thing we want to do is the risk and control self-assessment report. So you can see it here. There's my process, there's the risk. And now what you can do, you can say, tell me about no refresher continuing education. So that's the tier 3 risk. And here's where you get to say, does this risk ever happen? You could say, yeah, every semi-annually something relating to this risk happens. Is there a financial impact? And you can say, well, between $0 and $10,000, it's not really financial. 10-year worst. Is there a reputational risk on this? I would say yes, it's high. Outsourcing risk, no. Regulatory risk, yes, it's medium. And then you do the same thing for all your processes based on what you know, based on historical data. So again, great opportunity for a process owner to pair off with the quality and the risk people so they can start really aligning themselves and speaking the same language and completing this exercise together. What else do you get back from this? Complete the frequency and impact analysis. That's what I just did. So sorry, one second. Let me just come back to the last slide. So while you're on this panel here, you want your your process owners to tell you how manual the process is. So they can say, this process here is kind of manual. What's the probability that something bad could happen? He'll say medium. What's the gravity if it happens? And you might say, you know what, if something bad happens on this process, it could be really bad. So the gravity is heavy. And then finally, if you want to just give your own self-assessment on everything, you can say, from a mitigation point of view, as a manager, I put green. I'm confident we're not going to have any problems. I'm confident my control portfolio is going to save us. In this case, we got a red control, so he might actually put yellow or red. And he's going to want to do the same thing for all his processes, to tell the company where he thinks he needs help and where the risk team and the quality team should actually work together to make some of these reds yellow and maybe even green. So you're doing risk and control self-assessments. You're doing frequency and impact analysis. Again, teaching each team leader how to assess risk, how to predict the future using past data on what you really need to be careful for, so you don't make the same fault step again. Now, exercise number 5. I believe this might be the last one for the demo. Here's your dashboard. So now you start looking at your dashboard, and what your dashboard is giving you now, it's giving you your processes categorized in the categories of the 6M risks that you've identified. So in manpower, we've identified insufficient technical training, inadequate GMP knowledge, no refresher continuous education. We've identified the controls in the processes where the risk is present, and we've given our first assessment of a heat map of how manual the processes are, the probability that the risk could happen, the gravity, and the mitigation.